Hey everybody, welcome back to Tim Travels. It's Terry, your host, coming to you from Boston, Beantown, the capital of the Bay State. So I'm just going to set this right here. Getting loaded right now. Some kind of frozen seafood. I delivered a load of candy that I picked up yesterday in Hazleton, PA. I delivered that over to Braintree, Massachusetts, which is the hometown of John Adams and his son, John Quincy Adams. So the second and sixth presidents, respectively. Yeah, so I am getting the scenic tour of Boston. I've come in here before, and this morning the Mass Turnpike was jacked up. I was actually late to my first appointment, even though I left with plenty of time. But they had it down to one lane, like about, I want to say, couple miles before you get to 495, and there was about 8 guys in a very small area in the center lane of 3 jackhammering. So I don't know if this bridge started to cave in or if it was tearing up people's cars too bad, but they were working away. But man, it was just easily 10 or 12 miles of just idling forward. But it all worked out. I got to my second pickup on time. Had a hard back, probably one of the harder backs I've had in a long time at the other place, but just because it was tight. And but yeah, all's well that ends well, although I got to figure out, I swear I just drove in one giant circle. I came north on 93, went through the Big Dig, went across the Tobin Bridge, and then drove back around here by the airport. And yeah, so I'm right off of Chelsea Street. But I don't even know how I'm getting out of here. I mean, I know how I'm getting out of here, but I don't know. My clock is kind of well, I only got 3 hours and 7 minutes of drive time, 3:53 on my 14. So I don't know. It's gonna be close. Just getting far enough out to find a place to park, and I might just try to turn around here in this little dirt lot, and because I came down this narrow alleyway to get back here, because they have people out on the street. They're sticking so far out in the street that they're dropping the trailers and moving the tractors. But I was parked out front. I was double parked. I had my 4-ways on, and then I was like, okay, I got to back up and I got to swing it around to the right beyond these other trailers. So there was a truck going by, so I waited for him to clear the back of my trailer, and I started to back up. But I knew there was somebody behind me because I could see a shadow, so I wasn't just flooring it. But the dude that I checked in with, he was outside. He's like, hold on, and it turned out it was a cop behind me. So I'm glad I didn't back over the cop. But honestly, I was like, you'll just get out of the way, right? It's life in the big city, you'll just be like, hey, this guy's backing up, I better move. Yeah, I'm glad I didn't hit the cop, because then I'd have had to meet some police officer from Boston. And by the way, I think Boston's police department is the oldest in the country. Somebody probably knows that. But I think they've been around since the 1600s, their police department. Yeah, so just some interesting stuff going on. not good news for Forward Air. They just got their credit rating downgraded to by Fitch's and Moody's, which are two credit rating agencies. And they had sold corporate bonds, and I think the coupon was like, I think it was like a 9.5% bond, but they're selling at such a discount now that the effective yield is more like 11.25%. So you can buy, because they're based on $100, right? You can buy, or par is probably, I don't know what it is, but you can buy a $100 bond. In other words, a debt of $100 for like $91 and change right now, and I could do the math for you, but that's about the 11%. Because if you added like 11.25% to 91 and change, that would bring you to 100. That's how you can tell what the yield is on it. Anyway, so yeah, they've been downgraded. The analysts said, one of the two, Moody's or Fitch's, basically said they had horrible corporate governance, meaning they had bad managers. And I told you about them hiring the former CEO of Yellow. Now he's the replacement for the for the CFO that left in the wake of the Omni Logistics merger debacle. So, yeah, we'll have to see. They're in a really, high angle dive right now. I don't know if they're going to be able to pull it out. If they have any other issues in the next couple of quarters, they're going to be looking for somebody. Remember I told you I was right by the airport? Yeah. I think I'm at the end of the runway here. But they're going to have even more issues. So if I was an independent contractor with them, I would be stashing away cash and just making sure that I could survive a couple of weeks without any actual money coming in on settlements. And that's assuming you're positive on your settlement. So I don't know why, but I've been thinking about what the end game is for Prime. And I'm not sitting here telling you that Prime is going to go out of business. But it's kind of funny, because a guy called me this middle of the night last night, but I just happened to be driving, and you know how that is. Drivers talk to each other in the middle of the night. And he called me and he was like, hey, we talked about a number of things, but one of the things he was like, what do you think's the succession plan at Prime? And I mentioned to him that I had talked to somebody in the accounting and finance department at the company I'm at now, which is also privately held. And I was talking about, what happens. Now, the company I'm with, they've had more than one generation of the same family that's involved in running the company. But my understanding is that Robert Lowe, he has one family member involved in the business, but it's at a very low level. It's not somebody that's in the C-suite. I think another driver told me that his son works in like night sales, which is to say he has a job at the company that he probably cannot possibly lose, but he was put in a place where he can't do any damage either. So that kind of tells me that the succession plan at Prime is not to have some family member of Robert Lowe, ascend to the throne when he steps down or when he passes away or whatever. And, I think Mr. Lowe is a healthy, pretty vibrant guy. But, I've been around long enough to know that, you could talk to somebody in their 70s or 80s and they're like fit as a fiddle on a Wednesday, and on Sunday night somebody's like, hey, did you know so-and-so died? I mean, that's how fast it happens. Like my mom was 79, and she had a UTI, and like a week later she was gone. And because that's just how it happens right now. So so that begs the question, well, if it's not a family member, then what is the succession plan? And I really do think that it would be irresponsible of Prime to continue to bring people in and want people to hang around forever, because that's like the currency there, right? And not not tell people what they're at least planning, and because it doesn't need to be a big secret, right? Unless they just don't have a plan yet, like because having done wills and trusts for people, I know that a lot of people don't want to deal with the thought of their own death, so they wait until it's too late. I mean, that's why you have very wealthy people dying without wills a lot of times. So it might be that they've just never broached the subject, and nobody there is going to go up and say, hey man, you may die at any time, we should talk about what's going to happen with the company. Like, a lot of people aren't brave enough to broach that subject, although I would think the general counsel of the company would be the guy that should at least bring it up. So supposing for a moment it's not that, it's not going to be a family successor type of thing. So what are the options? Well, one option is to go public, and that means having an IPO. And I can tell you, from having worked at the Securities and Exchange Commission and watched a lot of this stuff over the years, it is an extraordinarily expensive prospect. You have to get a lead investment bank to be willing to underwrite the offering. You need to, there's tons and tons of due diligence. And of course, because you're going to ask for money from the public, an IPO, initial public offering, you have to disclose a lot of stuff. And you're going to have a lot of people looking under the table, looking up your skirt, doing, all sorts of due diligence. And that's just to even line up the people that are going to help you do the IPO. Oh, my guy's here. Hold on. Okay, I'm back. So, yeah, they finished loading me. I headed out from there. Man, I like big cities, and I don't shy away from going to them if I need to. But honestly, I've never done as much driving in Boston as I just did today. Even when I used to come in here with my Sprinter, I've gone to Cambridge a couple of times, but man, I was like all up in this city. And my nav wasn't cooperating. Like, a couple of corners it wanted me to turn, I'm like, yeah, maybe if they tear that phone pole down and take out that building, I can get around that corner. But I was lucky because I just kind of watched where other trucks were going. And I saw another truck from my company going down a street, like they were headed, I don't know if they were headed to the same place I was, because it was like I said, it's down under the bridge, under the Tobin Bridge, but the street they were going down was like a no truck street. Although unlike a lot of cities, there weren't any like seriously low hanging things. There's some truck restrictions, but no like low overpasses or stuff like that. So that was cool. But yeah, I finally got out of there. It took me, let me see. It took me an hour and 45 minutes to get from where I was to out here on the turnpike to the Framingham Service Plaza, which was a total of 41 miles. But yeah, like I said, I had enough of Boston driving around, and it was just gridlock. A lot of places they have, man, they like to do construction right in the middle of the day, and so that was, adding to the problems. But I did cross this drawbridge. It's one that just the whole deck lifts up, and I was like, what if a boat comes along? Will they let me just stay on the bridge? Because I think it would be kind of cool. I'd just set my brakes and see if they would just lift me up way up high. Because it wasn't one of these, and I don't even know what the term is, but it was just where the deck all goes straight up. But I was like, man, that would be cool. Just sitting way up there. They probably wouldn't do it, but it would be fun. As long as you live to tell about it. And anyway, yeah, so I'm out here. I'm gonna take a break. I'm gonna bring this load's just going to Pennsylvania. I'm dropping it in Pennsylvania. It's basically repowered or T-called. And then I'm picking up a load tomorrow in Bethlehem that's going down to Sanford, Florida for delivery on Monday. So anyway, getting back to what I was talking about. So, what are some of the things that a company that's privately held can do, assuming it doesn't want to shut down? And because that happens sometimes too, where a family's just like, hey, we tried to sell the business, nobody wants to buy it, but we're done. We're finished. We're just gonna pack it in and then just sell the building or whatever, the assets. I mean, that's happened, to lots of businesses. Happens in the restaurant business. And here's the thing to keep in mind. Just because a business has been around for a long time, even if it's a big business, does not mean that its survival is assured. Lots of stuff happens. Look, how long was yellow trucking around? 100 years or something since, there are no guarantees. So, what's the plan? What's the plan for Prime when Mr. Lowe is no longer able to do it, either through infirmity, or he just doesn't want to do it, or passes away? So I think the succession thing is probably not on the table, unless I'm misreading the tea leaves and, there's something going on that we don't know. The other option is to give it, basically hand it over to the people that are there now and let them run it. But I don't know what that would be a little unusual, not if there's not some kind of buyout. Not that I'm saying Mr. Lowe needs the money. I mean, he could walk away from it, and I'm sure he's not going to have to worry about where his next meal is coming from. But the other option is, private equity. We saw that at Fry Miller. We saw that at Super Service. And what private equity might look like is, I think it's kind of interesting that Prime has a lot of really distinct business units. They have their casino/hotel/restaurant business. They have a truck leasing business. And then they have 5 different divisions that do trucking, essentially. And if you count Hopper as being part of Tanker, then still 4. So Tanker, Hopper, Intermodal, Reefer, Flatbed. And, and then they have a bunch of property. Oh yeah, and then they sell trucks, pedigree, trucks and trailers. So a private equity play might look like they borrow a bunch of money, they buy the company, they maybe sell off some business units that aren't related to the core competency. Like they sell the casino, they sell you know, the hotel and restaurant and stuff, and even sell the Campus Inn. What's the hotel? The Oasis. They sell all that non-trucking property, and they say, okay, we're just gonna use commercial hotels when we need them. Because if you think about it, if you don't have drivers staying there, and let's say you don't have that many people coming in for training and stuff. Hold on a second. All right, I'm back. I moved my truck into a better slot because there's really not parking spaces, it's just some space. And now I'm like at least towards the front. I'm sure somebody will come and park in front of me, but whatever. Yeah, so private equity, you know, buy it, lard up the thing with a bunch of debt, and then, you know, sell it off, suck it dry, and then fold up the tent. I mean, that's the private equity model, right? Borrow the money, service the debt, and then take as much out of it as humanly possible to return to the private equity investors, and then call it a day. I was mentioning earlier about going public. Going public is a totally different animal because you got to disclose a lot of stuff. And, you know, nobody knows how much debt Prime is carrying. Nobody knows how much, you know, if their revenue numbers, the kind of stated revenue numbers that show up on you know, industry publications. Nobody really knows what if those numbers are accurate. And when you, and just even the idea of going public, exploring it is expensive. There, you know, any law firm that just comes in to look at your stuff, you know, that's $1 million engagement. Same with an audit firm. And publicly traded companies typically have to have 2 accounting firms. Either they have an in-house accounting department, and then they have a big public accounting firm that does their audits, or they have 2 outside accounting firms, because you can't do the accounting for a company and also do the audit. And you know, there's a ton of stuff. And you know, like US Express went public with the stated goal of paying off debt that they had, but then they didn't do it, and they had crap, you know, the owners, I'm sure, cashed out, but everybody else that owns stock, I mean, for the most part, it wasn't looking good. And I don't know that they weren't in some, you know, steep dive that they weren't going to pull out of until Knight Swift came along and bailed them out. The other option, but this is kind of, there's a little twist to this. The other option is an ESOP. Now, when I was at J&R Schugel, they had an ESOP. Other companies have them. They're the ones that say on the side of on the back of the trailer, employee owned. Okay, well, that's kind of a joke. It's like saying I pay taxes in Maryland so I can boss like a Maryland state trooper around, just because I partially own the, you know, state police. It's not a thing, right? And with with an ESOP, what ends up happening is they form an entity that is the employee stock option program, and they basically have the ESOP borrow all the money to buy the company off of the owners. The problem with these setups is oftentimes then the owners just become executives of the ESOP, and they never really relinquish control. So nothing would really change. So companies that have bad management, they just turn around and get huge payouts and still get to continue being bad managers. And the idea that it's employee owned, you get phantom equity in the form of profit sharing. But here's the thing about profit, and this is like accounting smoke and mirrors, right? If I sell, like, let's say I have a company and I was paying myself a salary of, let's just round numbers, $100,000. And then I sell it to an ESOP that borrows, millions of dollars. So then I say, well, I want $1 million for the company. So I get $1 million, and then I say, and I'm going to be the chief executive of the ESOP or of the company on behalf of the ESOP, but now I'm going to pay myself $200,000 a year, and if we hit certain profit numbers, then I'm going to get some giant bonus that's going to actually be netted out of profit. And then what trickles down is what we'll give to the employees, but then there'll be this really long vesting schedule, and it'll really favor the people that, like I've said in the past, the currency at Prime is how long you've been there. So it'll favor the people that are in the office building way more than it would favor any drivers. Because remember, every driver, it's just like if you're leasing from Prime, there's deferred comp put away, $1,500 a year. But as I was mentioning to somebody today, in order to qualify for that money, you have to hit age 65 and have been with Prime for 10 years. How many people do you think fit into that bucket? I bet it's pretty dang small. I bet they tie up, or say they've tied up, probably hundreds of thousands of dollars a year in that, because they're given $1,500 at every anniversary plus gains, right? But how many people get to age 65 and have 10 years? I think there's some people that get to 65 that maybe had a career change, and I think there are people that get to 10 years, but the odds of somebody really piling up money, I mean, that's just found money. If a few people get it, that's cool, but it's just not, the vesting of it is so, the bar is so high that I bet they pay out very, very little in real terms. And so the same thing with these ESOPs, like the vesting schedule when I was at Schugel, I would basically have to hit my 6th anniversary, or I would have to hit, I guess, my 5th anniversary, but 6 years at the company, before I was totally vested. And again, you look at turnover in the trucking industry, I bet there were, if there were, I think there were about 800 drivers there. I would guess that 100 of them had been there 6+ years. I met a guy that had been there 30 years, but I was like, I felt like they ripped off the drivers constantly. And so the idea that, they were ripping off the drivers to create profits, and then you were getting a portion of everybody getting ripped off was given back to them. But I'd have rather just not gotten ripped off and got my $500 a month bonus like I was supposed to get. That was way more valuable than any profit sharing that I was going to get after 6 years. So anyway, those are some of the options. Those are some of the end games. The other thing I will mention about ESOPs, like with Big G Trucking out of Tennessee, there was a lawsuit by employees because that was successful, by the way, because the owners, when they transferred ownership to the ESOP, they grossly overvalued the company. And again, it's just rich people getting richer, or trying to. And you know, I feel like there is a point coming, and I don't know when it is. I don't know if it's this year or 10 years from now. Maybe it's a moot point, but it would be nice to understand, what the plan is. And I mean, I don't even think that Prime has to say, oh, we're doing this, and then if it's 10 years out, they have to do that. It's not like they would be contractually obligated to do what they told people they were going to do. I mean, they could go for 3 years and then go, you know what, we took another look at it and we want to do this, and here's why. Or they don't even have to give a reason. I mean, and so whatever they decide, though, I virtually guarantee that the rollout of it, the announcement of it, is going to be botched. I'll just say that. I don't know what it's going to be, but it's going to be botched. Unless they get some professionals in there, which they're not gonna. They don't want outsiders. They don't want people with fresh ideas coming in there and saying, well, hey, what about this? They want people that are like, well, what do you all think? And, oh, can I get some more Kool-Aid? So anyway, if you're at Forward Air, keep an eye on what they're publicly filing. And if you're at Prime or any other company that's coming up to that, milestone, pay attention to what's going on, because you could find out that, one day you think Robert Lowe's, running the company, and the next thing you know, there's some dude in Miami or San Francisco or New York City that's in charge of the company because they sold to private equity. I mean, as an example, and this may explain a lot, but I think I've mentioned it before, that Capstone Logistics is owned by private equity, and they're based in Miami. And I've seen their corporate website and all these people that they have all over the globe, and I'm sure none of them have ever been in a warehouse at 2 o'clock in the morning. But you see what private equity does. Anyway, I will talk to you later. Bye.